It used to be, not so much anymore, but it used to be that weddings would typically happen in church sanctuaries, which meant that people who weren't all that connected to the church sort of felt obligated to find a church somewhere that they knew at least a little bit to have their wedding. Maybe it was a church where they did a year of vacation Bible school, or maybe it was that church that they went to on Christmas Eve with their parents. Identify that congregation where they might be able to have a wedding back in the days when weddings were always in congregations and sanctuaries. They would often call that church office with fear and trepidation, explain the circumstances, share the date, and then pop the question. Would the pastor be available to perform a ceremony? And if the answer was yes, then they would have to pop the next question. Can you tell me how much it costs? And then brace themselves often for the voice on the other end to pop the question of their own. Well, that depends. Are you a member here? Well, kinda. I used to play on the playground. My mother was a deacon for a 3-year term. There was that one year when my parents decided that they would bring us to Sunday school every week. Ah, yes, those were sort of the bad old days, where everyone was expected to be a church member and to be connected with a church of some kind. Makes me wonder how many other ministers were like me and got their hopes up when a young and fun couple comprised of one person who was technically a member, but who never really showed up. And then the other person who had all this energy and would make a great Sunday school teacher or maybe one day a board moderator. How many of us clergy got our hopes up around the time of such a wedding and wondered, if I do a really good job, maybe they'll come back to church. And sometimes it happened, but other times, most times, not so much. Well, weddings have changed over the years, right? Now many, if not most, weddings are in cool venues outside of the church sanctuary, places that speak to the priorities of the couple, barns, big old mansions, vineyards, boat docks, sometimes on the 18th green of the golf course or out in the middle of the bay, which is all great. No complaints. It means I get to go to all kinds of cool places to do weddings. But sometimes weddings do happen in sanctuary still. In fact, we're having one here next month, so there you go. And we have, at this venue, a place for the reception, right down the hallway. Weddings have changed a bit over the years. Another thing that has changed with weddings over the years is that guests used to be asked, upon their arrival at the church and then the sanctuary, by an usher wearing a tuxedo, often for the first time since senior prom, bride side or groom side, and then be seated according to which side they most identified with. This tradition probably goes back to the days of arranged marriages, when the bride side and the groom side didn't know each other. But I imagine it still happens in some church wedding ceremonies. Friends of the bride, friends of the groom. Friends of the bride, friends of the bride. We've never really done the friend of the bride or groom thing here in this space since we've renovated it, because let's face it, somebody's going to get gypped. Doesn't seem right to ask, how many friends do you have? Anyway. Suffice it to say that weddings have changed over the years. But if you would, for just a moment, imagine coming into worship on a Sunday morning, like you were coming into a wedding in the old days, and imagine, if you will, being greeted with a smile by the usher at the door of the sanctuary who would ask you a question. Good morning, my name is Dave. I'll be taking care of you during this worship service. Tell me, are we feeling grateful today or mistreated today? Excuse me? Right. Are you feeling grateful about your life, your job, your family, your career? If so, we'd like for you to sit over here. And if you're you're at church today more because you were told to come, or you're thinking about all those other things you could be doing on a glorious morning like this. If you're wondering if you're going to get home by the kickoff time, if you're still angry about that email that you swore you weren't going to read until you got into work tomorrow, or you're feeling a little hurt because you didn't get invited to the party that everyone's been posting about on Facebook, if you're feeling grateful this morning, we'd like you to sit over here. But if you're feeling a little mistreated, a little roughed up by life, carrying a burden and wondering why no one's asking what's wrong, then you sit over here. If you've been the recipient of an unexpected gift, over here, please. But if someone owes you something and you're here trying to figure out how to get it back, you sit over here. Grateful here, put out here. Now, we don't have to really move this morning, but I do. In your minds. But you might want to think about where you'd be on that continuum. Where would you place yourself? And just for this morning, all the people over here, the ones feeling grateful and blessed and lucky, you get to be Onesimus. Onesimus, weird name, cool story. Onesimus. From all we can tell, Onesimus was a house slave in the city of Colossae, which was a city in southern Turkey until it was destroyed in the late 1st century by an earthquake. Onesimus runs away from his master as a very young man, maybe even a child, and like so many runaway slaves of the day, Onesimus heads to Rome, the big city where he would have his best shot at just kind of blending in with the scenery and not getting caught. But when Onesimus arrives in Rome, things don't go that well. He runs out of money. He doesn't have a skill he can parlay into work. So what happens to Onesimus is what happens to runaway slaves, whether it's in the 1st century or maybe the 19th century, he was caught. And because he refused to say where he had come from and be shipped back, he winds up in the middle of a Roman dungeon. The house slave who didn't have his freedom back in Colossae, but who had it pretty good. He's in a deep, dark, damp Roman jail. Not feeling too grateful yet, right? But here's where the story turns. Onesimus gets to talking to the guy who's in the cell next to him, whose name is Paul. Paul takes an interest in Onesimus. Onesimus takes an interest in Paul and in the gospel that Paul is always preaching wherever he goes. Onesimus is then converted to Christianity, and over time, this young man becomes like a son to Paul. The son maybe that Paul never had. So here, in the middle of a Roman prison, Paul gets a son, a new convert, maybe even someone to help him around the prison. He gets a boost to stand up. Paul's old by now, and Onesimus finds his faith and finds a father. And from what this letter suggests, finds a passion and a call. Now we can presume that Onesimus is feeling pretty grateful by now. But then one day, while Onesimus and Paul are playing checkers, Paul happens to ask his buddy, "Tell me again, where is it you're from?" And Onesimus said, "Back east, Colossae." "And where in Colossae did you live?" "Oh, it was in the house of Philemon." Long pause. Afterwards, Paul takes a big breath and says, "Oh, dear Onesimus, it's a small world, isn't it? Back when you were just a twinkle in your mama's eye, your master, the one you ran away from, he let us set up one of our churches in his house. Your master, the one you ran away from, he and I were close." Another long pause. "Onesimus?" "Yes, sir. I'm an old man now, but you're getting out of prison pretty soon. You know what you have to do, right?" "Yeah, I guess." before you go on to whatever's next for you, you're going to need to go home first. You need to make amends first. You need to reclaim that part of your story that is lost to you first. I'll write the letter. You take it with you. You go first. And so when the time comes, that's what Onesimus does. His life has been saved and given meaning and value. His mentor has assured him that this is the right thing to do. His true freedom is just a journey away. And so Onesimus makes the journey back across Greece and Asia Minor over the top of the Mediterranean Sea. And he arrives at the home of his former master, which he can barely remember. It's been so long. He's got the letter rolled up in his hand, and he walked up to Philemon's door, and he asks to see you. When you arrive at the doorway, there's this guy. You don't recognize him at first because it's been a while, but when he looks up at you, you see it in his eyes. He's the one. He's the one that wronged you. He's the one that caused you so much heartache. The guy whom you were counting on to run your house maybe. The one that you put so much effort into so that he could tutor your children. So much potential. Ran away. The guy who wronged you is standing right there with his letter in front of you. So now all of you, Philemon, get to decide if you will go first. If you will let go of your grievance, if you will demand some form of penance or restitution, and if so, how much? Will you make him pay? Is this a prodigal son story? Are you going to break out the fatted calf? Or is this the guy who has done that thing that has made all the difference in your life? The one whose transgressions against you, the one whose violations against you started a cascade of awful and has forever changed your story? Philemon, what are you going to do? Now, I'm not saying that there are any easy answers to this dilemma of what to do about Onesimus who appears at your door. I'm not saying that the gospel prescribes any answers about what's to happen next. But I do want to suggest that there is something that lies at the very heart of the gospel about the decision to go first in asking for forgiveness and to go first in offering it. That nexus is where so much of the world turns. The beauty of this story is that we just don't know how things turn out, right? I guess we can assume that since the letter has been preserved, things went fairly well for the runaway slave. Philemon didn't rip it up in his presence. But we don't know how things went. We are told that Jesus asked God to forgive the ones who were putting him to death. But we're not Jesus, right? We're not called to do that. So maybe we just leave this story unfinished, right where the Bible leaves it, with Philemon and all the rest of us considering all the ways we have been grieved by Onesimus, meeting in the middle. And what do you know? Even though there's no resolution to this text, there is a table between the two around which we can all gather.
On the back of your bulletins, you will find the text for this morning's special music. We say a special thanks this morning to Wick, who is home from Chicago for a short time and has taken time to join us in our worship service. But special thanks to both